So our first speaker today, Bryan Liles, has a lot of experience in this space, both in, the like fun startup-y side, but also in the, hey, legit giant enterprise side. And I'm really excited to have him share some of his experience with you. So without further ado, I assume he's coming from this side, but I'm not even sure. Ah, there you are. Welcome, Bryan Liles. Give it up for Bryan, folks.
All right. So hello and good morning. I don't appreciate that, just to let you all know right now. So the title of my talk today is Sysadmins, DevOps, SRE, oh my. I've actually had this idea from months and months and months ago, and I started writing this talk months and months and months ago. I finished it yesterday, or maybe this morning during breakfast, I don't know. But I have a lot to say. I think I have 100 slides, and I'm already 15 seconds in. So let's get started. So I like to think that when someone's giving a talk, I look out right now, I see a few laptops open, and I want to give you an alternative. You can listen to my talk, or you could tweet at 2_emoji and have it translate your words into emojis. So it's an alternative. Pick whatever you want, and then we can go. So this says, hello, good morning. It's pretty neat. So I'm Bryan Liles. I've been doing this for a long time. I was talking to a young lady yesterday. I've basically been doing computers her whole entire life. And I don't think I'm that old, but I have been doing it since Friends was on. So I'm just going to date myself here. That's where I am. And also, I'd like to set the bar for this talk. I think all good talks have the bar set in the first 1 or 2 slides. So I'm going to start with this. What do you call hair that you get from IHOP? Extensions. All right, we could do better. Dad jokes is something I'm great at. So the other day, I went to the doctor, and my back was hurting. And he's like, you know what? All you need to do is smoke some weed. That'll solve your chronic back pain. This is the bar. So I work at a FinTech startup. FinTech. I don't quite know what that means, FinTech. It's called Capital One. And you may have heard of it. Trust me, I've heard all the what's in your wallet jokes. But if you have a new one, please let me know. And the reason I say Capital One is a startup, because look at everybody else in our space. We were founded in 1994. Younger than, or actually older than some of you, but really young. Our competitors are damn near, over 200 years old. So, and we are the 9th largest bank by assets in the world. So that's that's actually a kind of a great thing for such a young bank. But back to our topic. DevOps. I like to say that, we don't do DevOps because DevOps isn't a thing. It's something we talk about. So this is a journey and not a destination. So we're at DevOps Days, Minneapolis. Last week I was at devopsdays, DC. It was hosted by us. I've been to DevOps Days in a few countries, in a few cities. I've talked about DevOps. But I really don't ever get to talk about DevOps in an enterprise. And I know there is a DevOps Enterprise Summit. I will probably never go because they won't understand what I'm trying to share with you all today. So, what does Bryan think about DevOps in the enterprise? So, hands for people who actually work in enterprise here, because I heard, Bridget told me there was quite a few of you all. Wow, there's a lot of people here coming from the enterprise, not startup land. So I'm guessing all of you all who raised your hands, you have something called a DevOps team. Yeah, that's very enterprise. And then you also have DevOps as a means to tackle some kind of regulatory hurdle. I work for a bank. There are lots of 3-letter agencies that are after us all the time, and internal groups. It's really good. We're trying to protect our money, protect your money, protect everybody. We really don't want to have another, 2008. But when you're using DevOps as a mean to actually prove to your people that are your customers and your employees and your constituents and whoever that things are good, that's DevOps in the enterprise. And then here's my favorite one. We use DevOps to remain agile. And I know there's not a little d DevOps, but there's definitely a little a agile. And big organizations, all of you all who use Jira or version 1, that's big A. We do agile in this method. And the way that we do agile is we plan, and then we look for requirements, and then we develop, and then we do testing, and then we move it to production, and that's called agile, because I read it in a book. But you know something? It really doesn't have to be this way. And I'm going to talk, try not to talk too quick, but I want to share some ideas of how we can do this better. So what's the number one problem with every organization, big or small? Every single country, big or small, really just everything. People. People are horrible. I see all 850 of you all, and you know what? Every single one of you suck. But you know what? It's okay because I suck too. So just remember that. When it comes down to the end of the day, this is all about people. So I'm going to talk about people. So how does corporate communication work? Well, if you have a small team, we use GitHub or we use whatever else, and we do our pull requests, and they get reviewed, and some kind of testing process happens, and we move it to production. We ship 100 times a day. That's great in a small team. You can do that because if you think about it, if you have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people, that communication is very small. But what if you have a larger team? So let's say you have a team now where you're beyond your initial phase of whatever your startup is or in your org, and you have this 30, 40, 50-person team. Communication gets harder, but you still know almost everybody's name. And now you're getting into these smaller companies now where you have multiple teams doing multiple things because you want to ship multiple products to your customers. And then you get into the enterprises. We have multiple lines of business, and we're shipping multiple products in multiple silos with multiple teams. And this is a hard thing. At Capital One, we have 1,304 application teams. We have a very large number of products. I don't want to get dinged by our lawyers, but we have a very large number of products. So just think of some multiple larger than 1,300. And you realize that we are moving, so actually, to preface this, Capital One has made a big noise about us being in the cloud. We are in AWS, we are doing things there, and we actually pretty much like it. But imagine that you have to do coordination and you're trying to do all of this agile, DevOps-y type stuff, but you're in the cloud. And you have to do this with multiple ways of money coming in, multiple teams, actually in our cases, multiple people coming from multiple countries trying to get together. It doesn't work. And then you run into dev teams that say, every dev team says this, my problems are most important problems. I run into this all the time. The team that I run at Capital One, we are in cloud engineering. We have quite a few functions, but one of them is we build images for everyone in the cloud. Whenever people refresh their images because they want to upgrade, and it doesn't work, it's always my fault. And I say, you know what, that's okay, just send me a log file, and I'll read it next week. And this is the slide just to illustrate basically what I was saying. But you know what? I was getting a little ranty. It isn't all bad. You're saying, hey, Bryan, you're saying all those horrible things about working at an enterprise, but hey, you work at an enterprise. And you know something? Yeah. But you know something? I like to say that I do work at an enterprise, but there's a great path that you can go down, and I'll show you why in a couple seconds, of things you can do. So the first thing you need to realize is that when you're in a large group of people, the word wrong is always the wrong word. If someone is wrong, just say they're hard. Same meaning, same thing, but it's a much better conversation whenever you have to put it in a PowerPoint. So what is the hard path in DevOps for the enterprise? Well, DevOps teams themselves. If you have a team that identifies themselves as doing DevOps functions, and they are not directly integrated into the application teams or the security teams, that's a problem. If your process basically pushes people to the side and says the process is more important, the delivery of this new product, the making of this money, the warming of these chairs, because I do work in an enterprise, corporate chair warming is a thing. Some of you all get that. Whenever we optimize for process over people, that's hard, wrong. And then also realizing that you have the developers. Remember, DevOps has developers in there. If developers are not actually carrying pagers and participating in deploys, even though you might have regulatory things, I know some of you all do SOX, and SOX says the people who write the code can't push the code to production is a thing. But here's the thing, it's actually not a thing. It's what the auditors come in and say, or the people who are experts at SOX, but really, what you need to say is that the people who are writing the code and the code that's in production, we just need to know there's a direct path and a way that you can't change it without knowing. We don't have to stop people from writing and deploying software. And then here's my favorite one. So the best kind of talk is a talk where you quote yourself. So if you have a DevSecOps group, that's hard. Realizing that instead of thinking of DevOps as a thing that actually touches all these things, whenever you start in creating new terms, come on. So, enterprise sounds like it sucks. It does. But not really, because I work there. So why do I work at the enterprise? Well, the first thing is the people. If you want to interact with lots and lots of people, enterprises are great. In a typical week, I interact with 100 people. And sometimes, yeah, does it suck because I'm sitting in meetings all day? Yeah, it does. But I like people, and I like talking about people, and I like hearing about all sorts of ideas. And the next thing is diversity. Not that type of a diversity. I mean, I can go in any room and make it more diverse in the United States, especially here in Minnesota. Not that kind of diversity. Diversity of thought. There's a lot of different people coming from, I've only had one job, and I've been here at this bank for 20 years, and there's people like me who said, yeah, I've had companies, I've worked for companies big and small, and now I want a new challenge. And the third one is a challenge. The great thing about working for a big company, and some of you all know this, is that we can work on products that don't really make us money. Where else can you find, we don't have to sell our machine learning. We actually are using it to write things, to read forms for fraud detection, and not just a standard form, just a form that has been faxed to us. So these are the kind of problems that you can solve whenever you're working for a big company. So really, this is why I do this, because it's fun going to work and knowing that everything that I do is way bigger, is part of a way bigger thing than I could ever do by myself, and I'm challenged. Sometimes by ignorance, sometimes by technical prowess, but either way, I'm challenged. So, how do we get started? So who are you, how many of you here are new to the whole DevOps thing? There are a few of you. There's a lot of blue shirts out there. Everyone put on the conference shirt? So I wanted to talk about how I look at DevOps, and this is controversial. Actually, the rest of the talk is controversial. So you have a sysadmin, and sysadmins, they run a service, and they run another service, and they scale by growth. I need more Unix knowledge. Well, hire 10 more sysadmins. I work for an enterprise. That is not a problem. And then they do kind of like DevOps. But there's also a term for DevOps. There's multiple books written about DevOps. So what do DevOps do? I don't know. Maybe they provide tools as a service. I created that acronym. If you use it on Twitter, please attribute me. They're in support of the Agile process. Notice that's big A Agile, not little a Agile. They are there to help software become from idea to practice. And there's also something that Google made popular. I don't know if they created it. Actually, I think they did invent it, but there's multiple companies that have SREs. And what do? They're engineers first. They figure out, how do I do more with less? Usually it's less time and more firefighting. So here's a funny thing. SRE is DevOps. DevOps is SRE. If someone has a problem with you saying that, Bryan said it on a stage at a conference, so it must be true. So what should you know? Well, I want you to know one thing. In this day and age, you're going to know Linux, and you're going to know Windows. In a lot of cases, you're going to know Linux. And when I say know it, logging into it, typing your password or SSHing into something is not knowing Linux. I want you to know Linux at a fundamental level. I want you to be able to see, how do I know what processes are listening on a file descriptor? I want you to know that. You have to know that. But you also need to know bash. And not bash is that thing you type in, but you should know how to program. And please don't program your bash like you program your Bourne shell. Some of you are saying, well, that's the kind of same thing. But no, bash is born again shell. Really, whenever you're writing something in bash, use bash for what bash is. And also remember that scripting is an automation. In large companies, we have scripters, and they write scripts for one-off things, but it is an automation. What automation is that I can actually throw this thing over there, it runs, it complains if it broke, but if not, it doesn't say anything. You should know how networking works. Everyone knows, 127.0.0.1, but can you tell me how networking in Docker works, or more specifically, networking in LXC works? Can you tell me how to use IPVS? You should know how networking works. You should know how system services work. I give you all the privilege to complain about systemd, but you should be able to write a service file. It's 2017. You should be able to write one. You should know how to set it up with the environment. You should know how to write a Docker container that runs in it. You might not do it that way because you're using some kind of orchestrator, but you should know how that works. You should know tools of your space. If you're not using JQ to parse your JSON, yes, I said JSON, that's how you say it. If you're not using netstat to look at things, if you're not using other commands, you are not doing it right. But the most important piece here is you should have empathy. You should have empathy for those who don't know as much as you. You should have empathy for those who don't care as much as you. But you should be able to live through how they are seeing it. So, more into this. So I told you this talk is like all over the place. Remember the bar's down here. So let's talk about continuous integration. Continuous integration is creating an artifact that can be deployed somewhere. You should know that. Wow, I don't have my speaker slides in front of me, so I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but that's cool. So now you should know about continuous deployment, and not continuous delivery. You should have the ability to be able to deploy at any time, and you should be able to write software, have it committed, have it approved, and then go through its continuous integration thing, and then go all the way out to production. A lot of us can't because we have regulatory problems, but you should be able to be there. You should understand about monitoring, and not monitoring using Nagios. I'll complain about that later. And later is one more slide. You should understand long-term trends. So things like state, is it up or is it down, is not important. What you really want to know is how often has it been down over the last week, month, or year, if you actually care to go back that far. What did it look like last Tuesday? You should know something about time-based comparisons. And notice I'm giving you all these things as a neophyte that you need to learn, and you're like, oh, this is crazy. But guess what? This is what we do. And I'm actually kind of tired of working with people who can't think like this. So you should understand alerting as a thing. You should understand that alerts go out when they're important, when they're actionable. If they are not actionable, please stop sending those alerts. You should understand about visibility. So we share what we need to share, and we share nothing else. Don't share everything and have your users go sift through it. You should understand logging, and you should most importantly understand semantic logging. Whenever your Apache barfs to a log file, that's not great. I want to be able to have a computer, because guess what? We use computers. I want to have a computer to be able to go through there and actually determine what my latency looks like. You know, how many 404s did I have? How many 500s, more importantly, did I had? So yeah. So once you know all this, you're going to ask yourself, how can I be more effective? Well, the first thing you want to do is promote collaboration. One of the ways we can do this is we get together and we come to events like this, and we're going to share our stories. I happen to be, I drew the short straw or the long straw, I don't know, and I'm up on the stage promoting what I think. But really, in your local communities and in your jobs, you should be talking about the practice of what we do. Especially if you're an enterprise, if you don't have a community of practice around this, you don't have to call it DevOps community of practice, but if you don't have this, there's an opportunity there. And we should always be filling the gaps. This tool, so a good example would be Kubernetes. Kubernetes is a great tool. It's a great set of primitives. It's a great framework. But if you are touting and writing blog posts about how Kubernetes saved your organization, I think you're missing the gap that Kubernetes was created to solve a lot of problems, not your problem. And remember, it's all about scale. You know, we think in the little, we do in the big, and we embrace simplicity. This is pretty ranty, isn't it? So the most important thing, and I will have 2 slides on this because I think this is super important, is that when we have something, it doesn't exist until it's documented. And how do we document? We do the who, what, when, where, why, and how. The most importantly are the why and the how. Please start with the why and then end up with the how. Oh, hold on. Go ahead. If you want to take a picture of it, all right, you're good. All right. All right, so once again, what I'm saying here, and this is more of a rah-rah pep rally type of thing, is I really want you to understand that DevOps is not this little thing. DevOps is not those books you read, even though some of these books are really, really good. DevOps is not that thing over there in the corner. Really, what I think of DevOps, I think of the whole entire spectrum. We fit in everywhere. And the funny thing is, I don't even consider myself DevOps. I'm a developer. But I'm a developer of tooling and systems that, you know, I do distributed computing. I do things in the cloud. So I'm a developer in this space. So this is why I embrace this term. Yes, more automation. And this is important. We scale solutions with engineering. In enterprises, it's sometimes a little bit too easy to hire 4 or 5 junior people and just thrust them into something and thinking that's how we solve problems. Really what we should be doing is focusing on the engineering, focusing on how we do it better, faster, cheaper, because you can have all 3 instead of more people. So books that I love this book, The Phoenix Project. And the reason I use this once a week, and there was a dude in the Phoenix Project, I believe his name was Brent. How many Brents are there in here? Well, of course you're not here because you're at your job doing 3 other people's jobs. So, but really, I want everyone to read this or listen to it because I don't read books. It's hard. I listen to them in the car. But Phoenix Project tells a great story of how we should be doing things. The Site Reliability Engineering book, people don't agree with it, but it's this thick. And the writers of it are actually all very nice, and there are lessons for small and large organizations in here. The Art of Monitoring is also a good book because really sometimes it comes down to how do I monitor? Bryan is up here saying Nagios is bad, but really what does that mean? How can I do it better? The Art of Monitoring does give you a little theory. And the Go Programming Language book. I'm only putting this up here because I think at this day and age, in 2017, and I will say this at least 2 more times in this talk, that if you're in this room, you're doing what we're doing, and you can't write software, there is a problem. And I'm not asking you to be a developer, you know, write business applications, but there are things in your space that you should be able to code around. So, we're still in the neophyte phase, by the way. So I'm going to summarize it. Your job is to figure out how to provide 1 less step. So the thing took 10 steps before. When you get in there, it should take 9 steps. And really what you're trying to get it down is to 0 steps. And maybe that's not always possible, but that's the goal. And remember, you are the 10X. 10X developers, that's kind of a myth. Most of those 10X developers are only good at this one thing, or they're so terrible they kill organizations. But really, think about it this way. You are making, instead of being 10X for yourself, you're one person making those 10X, or 10 people twice as good. So I don't know if that's actually, I'm not a math major or anything, so that might be 10X, or it might not be 10X. But understand what I'm saying. You are there to make everyone better. Here's the first slide where I said, please learn a programming language. I am tired of running into system administrators who can't even write Python or anything else, but learn Go. So here's something else that I like to talk about. DevOps is, like I said, DevOps is so many things. There's lots of books written on DevOps. Every DevOps book that I've written or read has said something kind of different. So I'd like to throw in something else into the mix, something called AppOps. I know it's official because I gave a talk at Web Summit in Dublin a couple years ago, and it was on the slide. So this is actually a talk about a talk that I did 2 years ago. But really when I want to talk about DevOps, or I talk about AppOps, I say, how do I put this all together? Well, I have continuous integration, continuous deployment, logging, metrics, and error handling. But in 2017, I've kind of changed it up a little bit, and now I add tracing in there as well, because these are all the components that all of us in this room contribute to the stacks of our organizations. So now you've learned everything I just said, and you're not a beginner. So what else do you do? Well, guess what? Remember it was 9 steps? Make it 7 steps. And then, so remember that's our job. Our job is to make this process easier. And then also realize that developers are one part of the puzzle, you're another part. They own the application logic, but guess what? You own all this other crazy stuff. So you own this Venn diagram. I told Peter that I would put this slide into every single one of my talks this year, and so far I am doing very, very well. But really what I want to say is that when we think about metrics and logging and tracing and how we put them all together, this is actually a pretty good Venn diagram of showing that why this is all important. So I have 5 minutes, and I want to leave on a different note. So that part of the talk is done. Let's think about something else. So as DevOps, and this is more of the really, really soft side, I want you to think about the words, the power of words, the power of technology, and the power of empathy. And so we are the keepers. We keep it up. We keep on the pager. We keep it going. It's actually short enough to be tweetable, so I hope someone does tweet it. No, but this is how I think about things. We keep everything going. And you know, we're not the linchpin, but we do keep things going. We are people, and people ain't perfect. And yes, I know I put this in the slide, but I'm from the South, and this is how I talk. So we build tools as people to help our processes and help ourselves. But the problem with tools is we become our tools. Examples. Am I a gopher? I write Go. I've written lots of Python. Am I a Pythonista? I've written lots of Ruby. Am I a Rubyist? And I've written Perl. And I didn't know what Perl people were called, so they're Perl rebel rousers. And like Bridget said, I'm not here to offend anybody. This is not a knock on Perl. Larry and Wall and I actually get along very, very well, surprisingly. But remember, we cannot be our tools. We are people. And then also, don't fall for the team trap. Like I said before, Capital One has 1,304 at least development teams or application teams. But teams apply competition. You know, you have teams in baseball. Does Minnesota have a baseball team? I'm just kidding. I got y'all. Do you have a football team? I did it again. No, teams imply competition, and I don't like that word. I don't like saying teams. It isn't us versus them. It's all of us for the betterment of us. I actually have a t-shirt that says that on there. You know, we are people who write software for people for the betterment of people. It'll hurt, but progress is possible. Remember before when I said people are the causes of all of our problems. Once we have enough empathy to understand that, we can start getting into the real problems. And actually, wow, I got 2 minutes, so I'm going to fill it up with something. But we evoke empathy to solve problems for our users. And that's the end of my slides, and you all need to see this. What was I looking up earlier? All right, so we'll hide that. We will hide that. That is not important. But how I want to finish this is this. This is very important to me. I appreciate Bridget for all the great work she did to get people here to actually have a diverse, as in ethnicity and race and methods of thought. I appreciate that. I also appreciate the fact that I work for a large company that allows me to go and actually encourage me to go out and speak about things. I also appreciate that there are large companies, you know, I work for a bank, Capital One, but there's also other large companies that are thinking about these things and encouraging their people to say that, hey, you know, what we've done for the past, I don't know how many years, doesn't kind of work. And we see these startups out there doing what they're doing, but we think that we actually have the resources, not people, because I don't call people resources, but the resources, money, space, time to do these things. And I'm actually really ecstatic to see all of you here today, and hopefully you all learned something, and hopefully those of you who didn't listen went to 2_ emoji, and I'm Bryan Liles, and thank you.